Today on The Athlete's Mindset, I'm joined by former Cal State Fullerton catcher and former Baltimore Orioles draft pick, Cole Urman. Cole's journey through baseball has given him a unique perspective on one of the toughest and most demanding positions in sports, catcher. From his time at Fullerton to professional baseball, and now teaching and creating content around the art of catching, he's built a deep understanding of the mindset, leadership, and preparation it takes to succeed behind the plate. In this episode, we talk about what separates great catchers mentally, how to build trust with pitchers, the importance of communication and leadership, and why catching is about so much more than just physical ability. We also get into his baseball journey, his transition into coaching and content creation, and the lessons the game has taught him both on and off the field. I'm excited for this conversation. Let's get into it. Cole, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been too long since we really caught up, and I'm excited to hear just how things are going with you and the content you're creating and just making an impact on the younger generation. But before we get into that, I want to go way back to when you started playing baseball and when it hit you that you were going to be a catcher and just be a leader. When did it hit you that catching was just going to be your position and that's going to get you far?
Um, I would say maybe like early high school. I was like typically a shortstop, had more of like the lean body, didn't really have that like catcher body. My dad was a second round catcher, so I always had it. So I would always catch here and there, but typically played short. And then going into like eighth grade, that was when I started catching like full time. And then by freshman year of high school, it was kind of like, oh, you're on the varsity team. We had a D1 guy who was like playing every day. So I'd back up varsity and then go play my games. And then from there, it was kind of like, all right, I think I got a good chance at this. And then in terms of like, as I got older, it kind of like I felt more and more comfortable and got a little bit better.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, for most people, you grow up and you kind of just play every position, but I feel like the catcher position is just one where you got to be really good at and you really have to work at if you want to be good. Like, I mean, me just playing first base, it wasn't too hard. You just take ground balls every day and you're good.
Right.
But you got offered to head to Cal State Fullerton. What was that recruiting process like, and how did you end up at Cal State Fullerton?
It was kind of like not a last resort, but kind of like the last offer that I did get. So going into junior year, I was talking to like a bunch of schools. My first offer was University of Washington from their coach, Tanner Swanson, and he was at UW, ended up going to Santa Clara. So then my offer moved from Washington to Santa Clara. And now he's the big league catching coach for the Yankees. And he invited me to North Carolina to go play for like kind of like the trials for Team USA. And we had a bunch of different coaches there. So that's when I kind of got like a lot more notice. Eventually it turned into I went to a Cal Poly camp, loved it up there. Cal Poly slow. And then my head baseball coach for my high school was a Fullerton guy. And for some reason, my high school was like a Fullerton. Everybody that coached there, that used to play there, went to Fullerton. And so anyways, I went to this camp. They had Chad Baum was there, and that was kind of like good buddies. My head coach was roommates with Neil Walton, crazy
Sick.
enough.
Yeah.
And so I went there, did a camp. They really liked me. And at the time, they were like, this was 2018. So they were super regionals against UW, top 10 every year, top 25, whatever it was. And so I was like, no way, like Fullerton offered me, like, I would be stupid not to take this. And then so I went with
Yeah.
them.
I was the same exact way. I mean, growing up in Nebraska, it felt like if you were good, you pretty much went to Nebraska, or there were a few guys that would make their way to the SEC. But I always wanted to go out to the West Coast. And so, crazy enough, had a connection. Hookie's wife is from Omaha. And so he was actually out here and came and watched me play just one tournament. And it was like the best tournament I had played in my life. I think I had like 3 home runs on the weekend. So, got an offer, visited Fullerton, and was like, yeah, who would not want to come here? Um, and so during your time at Fullerton, I feel like our freshman years were kind of similar. You had COVID, had the COVID year, but also like
Yeah.
I feel like our freshman years were just a struggle. Like there was a lot
Yeah.
of older guys. What are some things that you struggle with from your freshman year to then your sophomore and junior year where you just started to really ball?
So freshman year, first got on campus. there was a guy in front of me who was, like, All-American, got drafted in the 2nd round. At the time, I was, like, almost that feeling of just happy to be at Fullerton. Like, I didn't even expect to play, like, going there. It was more so just, like, I can't turn down Fullerton. And then I ended up hurting my shoulder, which was terrible. It was, like, the longest process ever. Get into season, I'm, like, completely destroyed, can't even throw a baseball, can't really catch, but I had, like, a pretty decent fall. Not good enough to be, like, a starter, just, like, good enough to, like, travel around and stuff, and got hurt. Then COVID happened, and for me, COVID was, like, the best possible thing to happen because 1, I was hurt, 2, I got that year back, and it kinda gave me a year to, like, mature, understood what's expected of me. Ended up going into sophomore year, almost kind of like the same feeling, like, this guy's still here, but, like, I'm having fun, like, I'm in college, so I was enjoying, like, my time in college, and just ended up, like, raking the entire fall, and I was like, "Wow, this is crazy," like, I worked hard, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I wasn't, like, expecting any of this, and it was the day before opening day, and Hook comes up to me, and he goes, "You're catching tomorrow, Tanner Bybee," like, he's pitching. But the thing about Fullerton is the catchers, when Hook was there, the starting catcher or, like, whoever was supposed to be the starting catcher, he wasn't allowed or he was only allowed to catch the starting pitchers. So I was always catching, like, the back end guys, the guys that weren't gonna pitch much. Meanwhile, like, the starting guy or what was supposed to be the starting guy was catching Bybee, Luckham, Knorr, like, our main rotation. So I had never caught Bybee one time in my first 2 years, and I remember going up to Jenks, who was one of our coaches, being like, "I need extra catching work right now, like, Bybee's disgusting, I've only hit off of him." And then from there on, it was kinda like, had a really good year, batted, like, 280 technically as a freshman, but, like, a COVID freshman. Ended up getting, like, an honorable mention, and then from there, I was like, "Wow, okay, like, now I'm getting MLB scouts, now I'm getting, like, more," and then that was kinda when my expectations grew for myself.
Yeah, it's crazy. My first ever inter squad we had. Well, crazy enough, you and I like played catch. I think the first practice we ever had, and you have just an absolute cannon, and it just always have. And so I was like throwing, and you were just like we're playing like 200 feet. You're just putting it on a line, and I'm like trying to get it. Like it was just I was blown away and was like, how am I going to compete with this? And then we get into an inter squad, and my first inter squad at bats were against Bybee. I
Yeah,
go 2 at bats, 3 pitch strikeouts, both at bats. And I was like, I'm not meant for this. Like, it was like just
yeah.
tore away all my confidence. And then thankfully got a hit my last one. Um, but where do you think that confidence came from? Going from your freshman year to COVID and just kind of having to learn some things to you're starting on Friday night catching Tanner Bybee, who's with the Guardians now. Where did that confidence come from?
I think it came from, 1, having a strong fall, and I think I had that fall. I think there's a bunch of different routes that people go down. You're either the route where you work so hard and you get rewarded, and, like, you have the expectations, like, "I'm gonna do well no matter what." And then there's the other option, which was more myself, where it was the feeling of, like, no matter what happens, like, I'm fine, like, if I go 0 for 3 today, like, there's another day tomorrow. But I ended up, like, doing well, so my expectations grew over time. And then hearing like, "Oh, you're starting," gave me, like, another boost of confidence, but also, I mean, I've never been so nervous before. And then after that first game, I got my first at bat, I walked, and then Hook put on a delay steal sign, which in practice, he wouldn't even have me steal, like, and it wasn't that I was slow, I just never did. I was a catcher, and I was like, "Dude, I think I missed this sign, like, there's no way." He just gave me a delay steal, like, this is the first time I've ever been on first base. So I
Yeah.
take off, safe, and then Bybee after the game was like, "Dude, you were awesome back there, like, I loved throwing to you, like, you did amazing." And then from that point on, it was kind of like I belong rather than trying to, like, prove myself, even though I'm still trying to prove, like, I'm getting better and better. But it was kinda that feeling of, like, I got Tanner Bybee saying this, I earned the starting role, I'm kinda holding my own, and then realizing, like, I'm meant to be here rather than, like, these guys are way better.
Yeah. I mean, I think confidence is very evidence based. As much as you can put the work in the offseason and have a great fall, you're not going to feel like you're really the man until you play real college baseball and can prove that. I feel like you did just that when you find, you get the opportunity to catch on opening day, and then you have a good game, and it just throughout the season continue to improve. You talking about how Bybee kind of complimented you and just said you did a great job back there. What do you think it takes from catchers to build trust with pitchers so that pitchers get to that point where they feel confident throwing to a guy behind the plate?
I think it takes a lot of communication, one. I know for me, I was super inquisitive. So for Bybee, it was one, I had never caught him. Two, I did not want to like let him down in any way, shape, or form. So every in between innings was like, how do you want to attack this guy? How are my setups? Do you need me to change anything? Do you care if I go one knee down here? Um, and kind of like hearing what he wants to see, even if it was something that I was uncomfortable with, if I knew he liked it, I made sure to like do it that way. And also just like building like a relationship with them. By the end of my COVID freshman year, like I was calling him, or he was calling me Yachty, and I was calling him like some, I can't even remember the guy's name. It was like Nolan Ryan or something like that. And we just
Yeah,
would always say that after every in between innings. And it was like we used to like barely talk at all because he was like the older guy,
yeah.
the draft guy. And I was just this like young freshman that wasn't even supposed to play. And then by the end of the year, it was like we were like great relationship. He trusted me. He wanted me to catch him. I loved to catch him. And the first time I was like scared to death to catch him. So like over time it does work out, especially the more you build a relationship.
Yeah, and I think so many people, and this is just in all aspects of sports and life, is you kind of fear the unknown. Like, oh gosh, I'm catching a guy that's projected to get drafted pretty high after this year. I really need to lock in. I don't know if I'm built for this. And then you do it for a little bit, and you go, all right, yeah, I do have this. Like, this is
Right.
easy. This is in my bag. I do want to ask about just the leadership aspect of being a catcher. Like you said, it's your COVID, freshman year, your full year of college baseball. And like you said, you're catching Tanner Bybee, you're catching a lot of older guys with a lot of experience. As a catcher, you have to have some leadership. What do you think makes a catcher's leadership good, I guess? What do you think are the traits that make a good catcher?
Um, I think there's like a different type of leader. I mean, there's like multiple types. So for me, I was more so not the guy that's gonna like get in your face and tell you this is how it is. I was more so lead by example in terms of like when I would get out there, like I'm back picking, like I'm doing everything. I'm having the conversations in between innings to help the pitcher. And I think it's like you said, building the relationship is like a huge thing, communicating, but also making sure you're not like standoffish. So whether it's practice or a game, like you get out there, you make sure everybody's looking at you when you talk. But then, there's also the catchers where it's like in your face, like you just walk three batters in a row. That can't happen. I think there are times where, like that would come out. But for the most part, I think a catcher one has to be assertive, and there's different ways to be assertive. They have to, like, be an example of some sort, whether it doesn't have to be, like, a result-based, aspect, but it could be more so the way they practice, the way they communicate, the way they just go about their, like, day-to-day, whether it's in the weight room, on the field, in between innings, days they're not playing, pregame, and I think that's kinda how you tell, like, this guy is mature or not mature. Because had you rewinded to the year before, I mean, I maybe had 50% of what I had the next year.
Uh, I think we both have probably experienced this too, is where you have the guys that are just super rah rah and they'll yell, but there's not much of a message behind it, or there's not much meaning, and you're just kind of stuck there, listening. Like, why should I trust you? Like, why should I believe you? You're not the one that's really putting in the work. And so for you, it was like not always being crazy rah rah, but I feel like you did a good job of showing what the expectations are. Like when we were in the weight room, you weren't taking any reps off. You were one of the guys that was going hard in the weight room. It was like, this is the standard. And then same thing at practice. It was, you were never half assing it. It was just like, we're going to take care of business. We're going to get better here. Um, what do you think helped you improve the most throughout your time at Fullerton? This could even be from just like a hitting standpoint of going from being a catcher who was just really good behind the plate to, I feel like every single series, it felt like you just got better and better at the plate. Where do you think that came from?
One, I think it started in the weight room. I know when I showed up to Fullerton, I was maybe like 160, 165 pounds. And then by the next year, I was like 180. And so just that change kind of like helped me a ton. I think obviously tons of reps, practice getting a little bit harder and harder. And like when you face a machine for the first time, it's like, oh, it's the machine's fault. Like I can't hit because this machine is just the ball's going up. And then kind of turning that into, well, a good like you watch all these good college hitters and they're raking off this machine. So that tells you, kind of like they're not making excuses. So it's easy to find the excuses and then realizing, well, I can, like I can do this. I just have to get to that point. Having like a good routine was really big for me. That was one thing I, like, struggled with too, was finding, like, does this really work for me? It might work one day, but does it work over am I gonna be able to do this every single day, or is this, like, too much for one day? And I think kinda figuring out the routine in the weight room, how to get my body to feel right. So if I work out too hard and I go into a game, I'm sore, I'm slow. But if I don't work out enough, I feel kinda, like, lazy, I wanna get bigger, I wanna get stronger, faster, so forth.
Yeah. I feel like you and Bobo were always just like in the weight room when we would have our baseball lifts, and then by the end of it, you guys were just lifting like bodybuilders. And it was
Yeah.
kind of nice for me because I could just join you guys, and I was nowhere near as jacked as you guys. But it was like, yeah, I know I'm not playing. Like, I got my Tuesday night, maybe I'll get a pinch hit at bat in the ninth. But outside of that, like, I can just get lift and get big. And I think you are a great example of just like, we're going to take the weight room seriously. And it definitely paid off for you. I want to transition now into you getting drafted by the Baltimore Orioles. What was that experience like when you first got drafted? And what was that transition from college to pro ball like?
Um, the, like, draft process was a lot because I had the year before I got drafted was also, like, a draft year because of the whole COVID aspect. So there's a lot of, like, meetings with teams, Zoom calls, phone calls, that, like, portal. There's, like, that MLB draft portal, filling out those. And then anyways, on day of draft, all, like, my buddies came in, like, we had, like, a little pool party, waited to get drafted, got drafted. The Orioles were the only team, I swear, that, like, never contacted me, never signed a portal, never talked to them. Every other team, like, I had at least done, like, their draft portal. The Orioles were, like, the one team where I didn't even expect it. So, in hearing, like, my agent calls me like, "Hey, congrats, you've been drafted by the Orioles." I was like, "What the heck?" Like,
What?
I know
Yeah.
nothing about the Orioles, like, that makes no sense, but, like, sounds good, and he's like, "In 2 days, you're going to Florida, so get ready." I got lucky. The scout who watched me play, who I had never met, seen, never even knew the Orioles were in the stands. He like drove down an hour with like a full gift bag of like an Orioles shirt, hat, met me, told me like he wanted the best for me and like the reason why he wanted me to get drafted by them. So that was really cool. Get to Florida, and now it's like it's completely different than getting like going to college. And call it well, maybe actually not for you because 'cause you're from Nebraska, but for me, like, coming from California, almost everybody from Fullerton is from California.
Yeah,
So
there
you
was
get
maybe like
drafted.
3 guys that were not from California on the team.
Yeah, so it's probably more similar to your experience, but get drafted, and I get there, and it's like the whole team is SEC, all from the South, all from East Coast, even Midwest. I'm the only California guy besides Briley Cooper, but he's NorCal,
Yeah.
and he was, like, LSU and like, the personalities were like nothing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, from people being, like, so religious, which is, like, at Fullerton, like, there's people are religious, but it's not to the same aspect as, like, a
Nowhere
Southern
near the
person.
South, yeah.
Yeah, and, then you have, like, your crazy people who are just, like, all over the place, and that was kind of like, "Wow, this is nuts." Then you're walking past all these big leaguers that are rehabbing in, like, the spring training facility when you get drafted. And then you go face these guys and everybody's 95, 97, 98, 97. You're like, "This guy has $6,000,000, like, and he's pitching against me right now, he's throwing 99." First at bat, I remember, like, it was probably 5 pitches, and I didn't see one of them. See you later. Ended up, like, chasing a fastball that almost bounced, which, like, to chase a fastball down is tough to do,
Yeah.
but it was a crazy process.
Yeah, I can't imagine, and pretty much everyone else I've talked to has said the same thing. And like playing in the Big West and then playing in the WCC, I think they're kind of similar conferences. Is where you're not seeing a whole bunch of like flamethrowers. Like a lot of these
Right.
guys are sitting like 90 to 92, and that's the starter. And usually they just have a pretty good off speed, and they're really just going to mix it up. While guys in the SEC, they're used to facing 95 on a Friday, Saturday, even
Yeah.
a Sunday. Um, so how did you, from a hitting standpoint, how did you, try to match up with that and get more comfortable where you realize, all right, you're not going to be facing guys that are sitting 91 anymore. Like you're going to have to face some
Right.
dudes. How did you transition to that?
I think that that was the toughest transition, and I honestly don't think there was any time or any pitch over 95 I was like, "Oh, I feel comfortable." I
Comfortable?
think every
Yeah.
time somebody was 95 plus, it was kind of like, "This is fast." And I think it was more so the faster the person threw, the more the off speed looked better, meaning or like the breaking balls. So now that slider that's 91 and then they got an 80-mile-an-hour slider, it's easier to see. Kinda pops out of the hand a little bit more, but now these guys throw 88 sliders, 87, 85, 83, and then they have a 98 fastball, so that range is huge, and so we did a lot of foam ball work where it was like we're facing 105 off a foam ball coming out of a machine, and it took me forever to get used to. In my short season when I got drafted, we went to low A, and I swear every single hit I got was somebody under 94. Anytime it was 95, it was either a walk or strikeout or like a clip pop up to first.
Yeah.
And I remember I came home and I batted like 320 in short season, and I was like, "Wow," but in my head, I kinda knew, like, it wasn't lucky, but I knew I only was getting the hits on, like, a 2-0 fastball at 93 or a 2-0
Yeah.
fastball at 94. The second it was 95, I'm fouling it off. Fouling it off, then get a nasty slider, chase it, whatever I would do. And then I think over time, the more reps, you get more comfortable. So, like, I did feel like much more comfortable, but never like a feeling of this guy throws 90, like, let's go.
If you're an athlete, you know the little things make the biggest difference. That's why I trust Momentous for my daily performance and recovery. Their vital aminos help with muscle repair and energy, while their creatine packs are perfect for building strength and consistency without any of the guesswork. Whether you're in the gym, on the field, or chasing your personal goals, Momentous supplements keep you fueled to perform your best. If you want to take your training and recovery to the next level, check them out at momentous.com and use the code Athletes Mindset for 15% off. That's Athletes Mindset for 15% off at checkout. Yeah, I feel like you can't expect that too, where you're just like, oh, if a guy's throwing less than 95, then I'll be good. Then I'll figure it out. Because once you continue to build your way up like you did, everyone's just throwing harder and harder, and their stuff's getting better as well, especially their off speed. From a catching standpoint, did it ever help you grow in confidence that you were catching some of these guys and just seeing, the shape of their pitches or just how they go about it on the mound? And do you think there are ways that catchers can use being a catcher to their advantage where it can help them in the box as well?
Yeah, 100%. I know me being like a defensive catcher, the velo was never a problem. I actually, as so when you get drafted, well, coming from Fullerton, we didn't have like a crazy analytical team or like didn't know too much about
Yeah,
any of those things. So getting
yeah,
drafted, hearing about like horizontal movement, vertical movement, pitch shapes, like a pitch chart, and then getting there and kind of understanding it. I loved the guys that threw like 98 to 100 with like a four seam fastball because that ball stayed up compared to like 90 that was sinking down. It was harder to catch. And catching those shapes is easy. It is so much different than hitting. I don't know how to explain it. I wish it like translated. And it does a little bit because you get to see the pitch. So if you're the home team or you're not up to bat in that first inning, you kind of like get welcome to it, whether it's you block a ball off the chest and you're like, okay, like I'm in the game. Or it's like you catch 98 and you're ready to go. Or even the pregame bullpen. So I think that is an aspect where it kind of benefits you. But then at the same time, it's like when you're hitting, the way you're standing is different. You're closer. You have to start earlier. There's just like a whole different aspect. But I think it does help in maybe like building an approach, knowing the way you would like attack a hitter compared to some, like if you played first base your whole life. like, you have your own approach and you know how to hit and so on, but it's not every time you're on defense, you're, like, sitting there, "Okay, what sign would I call right here?" You know what I mean? Compared to when
Yeah.
you're catching, you're like, "'Kay, like, 2 strikes, he just fouled this pitch off." But then sometimes it screws you over because then it's like, "This is what I would call," and then they throw something completely different, and you realize, like, every catch is different.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because I spoke with Spencer Schwellenbach, excuse me, with the Atlanta Braves, and when he was at Nebraska, he would play shortstop for 8 innings, and then he would go close, and then he got drafted and became a starting pitcher. But he said when he pitched, or even sometimes when he hit, it would almost mess him up because he would be in the box thinking like, "Oh, if I was on the mound right now, this is what I would throw to myself." And
Yeah,
he's expecting an off speed or a slider or something, and then a fastball comes right down the middle, and he's like, "Wait, I'm not that guy on the mound, and that guy on the mound doesn't throw 100, he throws 90. Like I can hit this." So it's super interesting you
right.
say that, and I feel like it's just finding a way to have a good balance. I want to ask, what do you think is some characteristics of guys that do make it all the way through? All the way up to the bigs. You probably played with a few guys who have just continued to rise and rise. What are some things that you think get them to the show?
I think I could be wrong here, but I think there's 2 different types of players. There's the one player that just grinds, shows up every single day, whether he does good, whether he does bad, and he's just grinding, but he's grinding the right way. We all know those guys who grind 12 hours a day, and they just seem to, like, work harder than anybody ever, and then they get no results, but, like, they kinda don't have a plan, they're just, like, working to, like, work, but, like, these guys come in, they know exactly what they need to work on, exactly, like, what strength and speed and the way their body feels, and there's that aspect, and you could see him get better and better every time, and, like, if you get drafted, you have a tool set that's good enough to be there, but then they, like, really maximize whether it's, like, strengthening their weaknesses or even strengthening the stuff they're already good at, and, that's where you see, like, the guys that are drafted in the 10th to 20th round, and then all of a sudden they're, like, batting 280, and then the next year they're 300, and then they get that confidence of a first 5 rounders because 'cause they're moving up, they're doing well, and then the other type of player is the player who is just not that he didn't work hard for it, but he has, like, natural talent that is off the charts, like a Paul Skeens. Like, obviously, he works crazy hard, but he also, like, has this natural talent, or guys where they're 5'10", hitting balls 450 feet, and it's like there's guys that are 6'3" that are struggling to hit a ball 450 feet, and they're 40 pounds bigger, and so, like an Enrique Bradfield, like, he's so fast, like, but he works on it, like, to be faster and his base
Yeah.
running and so on and so forth. But, like, that's a natural talent where that's gonna help him get there beyond some of the other people who may not have that same speed that work so hard to be that speed. And I think that's kinda like your 2 different types of players, and then you might have, like, your mid-range player, like somebody more like me who is, like, maybe in between. I do one aspect really, really well, but too far down in a different aspect. And, like, I work hard, but I'm not the hardest worker in the whole entire org, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said, and I've always had kind of that same idea. Is I think my best friend Max Anderson, who's in the Tigers organization, he has always just been like the best hitter I've ever known in my life, and he got sent. He um, pulled his quad, went back down to Florida, was rehabbing, and then had his first game back playing in low A and goes 2 for 3 with 2 home runs after not hitting for 3 weeks. And I was like, "How do you do that?" And he was like, "I don't know. I just saw it and I hit it." And I'm like, "Screw you,
Yeah,
dude. I had to
exactly.
spend like 5 hours in the cages to try to fix one little thing, and then it still wouldn't work." And he just shows up and
Yeah,
hits. But yeah, I think it's the guys that are just so dedicated and know what they're doing. And then also the guys that don't care too much, or they don't care when they do fail, or don't let it eat them away at them. Um,
right.
I wanted to move on to now your content creation, and you started the Urman baseball account. How did that come up, and what's your goal with it?
So I do lessons typically every off season, come home, have a bunch of like 12, 12U, maybe even like 8U, all the way up to high school players that I do lessons with one on one. I have a cage at my house, And so originally it started with like, oh, I'm gonna do a camp so that way like I can funnel more kids at one time rather than just packing my schedule. And so that's why the account got created. But I never like put any content out there. It's more so like, oh, there's a camp this time. Maybe like there was like a small video on there of me receiving during like high A season. And other than that, nothing. And now I'm in the process of building a company, and it is like related to baseball development. So it's kind of like a little bit of both. Also want to like eventually move on to doing camps in different areas. So if I'm up in Orange County, I can say like, "Hey, I'm doing a camp on this Thursday," and have some sort of following, as well as, like knowing that I have the credibility, the experience, and some like really great tips. There's so many kids out there that are not anything against these coaches, but the better coach you can find, somebody that can point out something super small, something or somebody that knows like a good plan for you to improve that's been there and done it without being one of those guys who was like, this guy just has no clue why he's so good, but he is that good. I wasn't maybe defensively had like a good arm, but in terms of like receiving, blocking, hitting, I had to work on everything to get better and better. And so like I feel like I can offer a ton of good advice compared to, just taking these parents' monies and, trying to I help their kid a little bit, but I'm really doing it for a job. For me, it's more so, it helps me, it helps them, and it's like a credible source, good experience. And I mean, practically the best tips you can get coming straight from the knowledge of pro ball, D1 baseball, so on and so forth.
Yeah, 100%. I think the catching possession too is somewhere where you're not going to see a whole bunch of high school coaches that were catchers, or even if they were, probably not at the highest level. And so a lot of these high school kids or just younger kids, they don't have a catching coach or a mentor in their life that can really dive into what they need to do to get better or receive and any of that. I did want to ask, maybe more from like a mental standpoint, what are some things that you're seeing a lot of younger guys struggle with, whether it's, younger into high school? What do you think a lot of those players struggle with and could get better at?
I think confidence is a big one. I think like a fear. I know I had the same fear. Like especially you catch somebody that's throwing super fast and you're like, oh no, I don't want to block this. I'm kind of scared and your like whole catching gets thrown off. But having the confidence to be back there saying like I've been there, I've done this. And I think that's one thing that I do when I work with like a player. Typically I throw like, I throw pretty firm to a 12-year-old. I'd like break off some good sliders, good curveballs, stuff, they're probably not catching in a game. That way when they do get into the game, it feels like, oh, I've caught much faster. I've caught much harder. I've mixed it up. They're blocking, transferring, receiving to like a high standard. So I mean, they're 12 years old. Realistically, they're not going to need to know some of these things. But I think as a baseball player who's been there and done that, the earlier you get the awareness of one, what you're doing wrong and how to fix it, and things where they might not be needed now, but if you knew about it earlier, like it would be nice to know when you're older rather than you get to college and you're like, oh my goodness, like I've never heard of this. And now I need to fully fix this, whether it's in your swing, whether it's catching. So getting the right mindset early, getting the right mechanics early. And the fastest way to develop is one, like challenge yourself in practice, and two, be aware of how to fix what is going wrong and knowing what is wrong.
I think that's perfect too. And I'm glad that you are doing that where you're teaching younger kids things a lot earlier. I mean, because from my personal experience going from Nebraska to Cal State Fullerton, playing high school baseball in Nebraska wasn't too hard, wasn't too crazy. Felt like I was kind of a big fish in a small pond, and then went to Fullerton and was a small fish in a huge pond. And there were so many things that I learned that I wish I did earlier. That's kind of another reason why, like, I'm doing the podcast is I probably needed to listen to something like this when I was in high school of, professional baseball players talking about the mental side of the game and about baseball. What do you think are the most If you could just give maybe 2 or 3 tips when it comes to being a really good catcher that the younger generation could probably use, what would they be?
Mm. I think it's a tough question. 2 to 3 tips. Do you want it mental tips or physical tips? Because I think that's like
Either. I
a
think, yeah,
big
just
difference.
what makes the best catcher possible.
I think one, especially if you're young, you have to work hard. I think it's too hard of a position to not work at it. A lot of players just wanna hit, hit, hit. Hitting's more fun, but the better catcher you are, the more doors open up, especially, like, for me. Um, and then 2, I think this might sound like saying to go get a private coach and I'm not saying that at all, but what I'm saying is if you don't have somebody in your corner, whether that's a coach you already work with, whether that's like maybe you go on YouTube and look up a ton of videos, but somebody to tell you like, "Hey, this is wrong. This is why you need to work on it." Keep it fun because there's the coaches and parents that are so hard on these kids at such an early age where they get burned out right away. But also, like, give the right tips because the last thing you want is to work for the next 5 years on things that are you're gonna get to college and immediately they're all gonna be changed. Or you're gonna get to college and have no clue what you need to work on because everybody's told you you've been so great and you've been the big fish in the smallest pond. And rather than, like there's players out there that are 10 steps ahead of you. So how do you, like, slowly chip at that and get better and better?
Yeah, I think it comes down to not having an ego and understanding that as a catcher, there's always ways that you can get better. And so I think the guys that really do struggle are the ones that just get complacent or think, they are good enough and they're going to get to college or, pro ball and think, yeah, I'm done learning. I got it all set. So I think that's great advice. I end every conversation with the same question. If you could go back and give your younger self just one piece of advice regarding the mental side of the game, what would it be? Let's say it's freshman year Cole at Fullerton. If you could go back and talk to him, what would you tell him?
I would say stay consistent, stay optimistic, and, like, believe in yourself because realistically, you don't really know what's gonna happen, and rather than being scared of what could happen, like, be present every single day because that fear is just a waste of your own time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's always going to be uncertainty, and you can go into it with fear. You can go into it with confidence, and I think that's a choice that you're going to make. Cole, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on, and I'm excited to see where this content goes and just all of your development. And I'm happy you took the time to get on here.
Yeah, of course, thank you for having me on. It's a good
Yes, sir.
podcast.
Thank you again to Cole for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoy this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.